Hello, everyone. Welcome to our homeschooling survival guide for homepreneurs. So I'm going to give everybody just a quick second to settle in, and I'm going to invite you to grab a pen and a piece of paper or whatever you use to take notes and your favorite drink. My friends from Australia say their favorite cuppa. It's a new word that I learned in my 3 years in Australia. So this is my shout out to all my Aussie friends down under. Now, take a quick minute to say hello. Hey, Luba, welcome. Take a quick minute to say hello. Grab your pen and your piece of paper. And like I said, this is our homeschooling survival guide for homepreneurs. So I have taken a good amount of time today to prepare this conversation. In fact, I hope y'all are ready, but I've got 5 pages of notes to share from my own life experiences over the last 5 to 10 years of this educational experiment that we have been on in our home. And I want to say hello to a lot of our friends that are joining us for the first time ever. And what I'm going to do, actually, I'm just going to very quickly, while you're settling in and grabbing your piece of paper, I'm going to go over here to our Facebook page and make sure that it's working. I just want to do a quick check. Can y'all hear me? I want to check and make sure that the microphone's working. Everybody got it there? Yeah? Okay, good. All right. So let's go ahead and jump in. For those of you that I haven't had the privilege of getting to know yet in person, my name is Haya bin Shabbat. A lot of times people see my name and it's spelled Chaya, and it totally throws off my American friends. Like, is it Shaya? Is it Kaya? They have no idea how to say my name. So the easiest thing I can tell you is that the C is silent. So it's like Haya. That's how you pronounce it, okay? So now that we know each other and we go way, way back, let's go ahead and jump right in. So let's look at what is happening in the world around us, okay? What is happening right now is complete madness. There is absolutely no way that any normal person, any sane person would have been able to predict actually what we're seeing right now. And pretty much every parent on the planet is being forced into a homeschool situation. Y'all, this is nuts, okay? And it is really mass chaos and panic, mostly from the parents. You know, parents are afraid of everything right now. How am I going to get my work done? How am I going to educate my kids? How am I going to make sure they don't fall behind in their studies? How are they going to, get into college and life? And how are they going to succeed if they're out of school for the rest of the year? I'm just for sure this is going to be the beginning of where they're going to fall behind. They're never going to catch back up. They're going to end up on the streets and homeless. What am I going to do? Never mind, they're in preschool at the moment, okay? Parents are asking themselves, how are we not going to kill each other? How are we going to cope? How are we going to, keep money coming into the family? Are we going to prepare for Armageddon? How are we going to all stay safe? How are we going to wipe our bums with no toilet paper? I mean, the list of fears is just absolutely endless. Now, I want to share something with you, okay? This is as much an exercise in personal and professional development for every parent on the planet than anything I have ever seen. So I want to share with you just a little bit about the fear that is going on, okay? If you have been a student of life or a student of personal development, there are a lot of acronyms that are tossed around and shared about fear. So acronym, the first letter of each word. So fear, F-E-A-R. Well, some of the most popular ones are false evidence appearing real. Then you've got freak out everywhere and run. Or you've got face everything and rise. And those are the choices that we have today, right now. And you know what fear really is, when it all boils down to, is fear is a lack of data. When we don't know what's happening, when we don't know what to expect, we just make stuff up. And the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. So once we start playing these imaginary movies in our head, we are off to the races with the trauma and the stress hormones that we're literally creating our own worst nightmare. We're creating our own like prophetic stories by this crazy madness that we're telling ourselves, simply because we are all in a situation right now that no one has ever been in before. So what we're going to do today is we're going to work to replace that uncertainty with actual tips and tools that you can use to plan your life for the foreseeable future. So I want to start off just by telling you a story. And this is a part of my own personal story that I haven't often shared because, quite honestly, it didn't seem relevant to the rest of the world. Okay, so I want to ask you right now, this is going to be an interactive conversation. So I want to hear from you. Where are you holding right now? And I want you to answer me in the chat. Now, I know this is a weekday still in Australia. This is a weekend in the States. It's bedtime and chaos time for a lot of families. Some of you on the East Coast, it's a bit later, so you'll be able to plug in and join us live. And some of you are going to be watching this on the replay, and that's okay. So if you're watching this on the replay, of course, you're going to type hashtag replay into the comments. But if you're live or on the replay, I want you to share with me where you're holding right now. So if you've lost your job as a result of this madness, I want you to write lost my job in the comments. If you are working from home and you haven't worked from home in the past, so this is a new transition for you, I want you to write working from home in the comments. If your kids are at home and they have not been home in the past, I want you to write kids at home in the comments. And then if nothing has changed, then just you can write nothing has changed in the comments. Okay. And that way I'll know where you're holding so I can have a better idea of what resources will best support you right now. Okay. So back to the story that I wanted to share of how I went on this education, homeschooling, unschooling, traditional schooling, alternative schooling journey, and how it may help you where you are right now. So back before I had kids, so my son just turned 12. So back before I had kids, I had a dream that I wanted my kids to learn from real life, not just in theory from a textbook. But I had absolutely no idea how that would happen. And then when my son was a toddler, I read this book called 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and my head just exploded with possibilities. You know, I had these visions in my mind of, you know, traveling the world with my kids and working only 4 hours a week and learning yoga and working remotely as we climb the Himalayas, you know, becoming a billionaire, all these things that were going through my mind. And of course, none of those are actual reality. And then what I learned across the course of, 10 years of personal and professional development and learning from all of these gurus and these professionals and these visionaries and these dreamers and these life hackers, what I learned is that the overwhelming majority of them are men. Okay, so what that means is they either have a wife or a support team of some sort behind them that allows them to do all these crazy things, all these wonderful, amazing, mind-blowing things that a normal, everyday mom or working woman would not be able to do in this current version of reality. Okay, so I was living in this dream world of what I wanted to do, but meanwhile, the people that were actually doing it weren't in my situation at all. So I had absolutely no idea how to take this dream and turn it into a reality. Fast forward a little bit, I had my son, and when he was 2 and 3 years old, I was working from home. I had already built a somewhat successful career working from home, and I decided that I did not want to put him into a traditional preschool at that time because of all of the horror stories that I was hearing from all my friends about how their kids were sick all the time. So one week after the next, they had a runny nose and then a cough, and then a runny nose and a cough. And it's like they were just sick all the time because of all of these germs and bugs that were constantly being passed around in preschool. And I just was not interested in that whatsoever. So I didn't want to go down that path. And so I decided that I was going to homeschool him while he was in preschool, and I was planning to put him in traditional school, but I didn't homeschool him myself. Okay, at that point, I bought the workbooks. Back then, they were mailed hard copy to our house, and our nanny facilitated his homeschool learning for 2 years, when he was 2 and when he was 3. Okay, now fast forward to a different phase of life. I moved from Texas to Arizona right as he was about 3.5. I moved from Texas to Arizona, and I got divorced, and I had to rethink my whole entire life. Now, when he was just about to turn 4, I decided to go ahead and put him into a preschool. I put him in a Montessori school. He was there for 1 semester, so half a year. And then he did a full year in traditional preschool in the Phoenix area. And right about that time, we decided that we were going to move to New York. So I decided that while he was in the middle of this transition, and I didn't want him to have part of the year in Arizona and then part of the year in New York, and I was a single mom, and I could not wrap my head around moving him and getting settled and interviewing preschools and kindergartens and just all that stuff. I just could not wrap my head around it. So I decided that I was going to homeschool him during that year of kindergarten while we were transitioning to New York, and I brought in a part-time tutor to take him on field trips. So like to take him to museums and take him to an ice cream parlor, teach him how to tie his shoes, like just these activities. And to be real honest with you, I was in the middle of a life crisis, and I didn't want him to suffer with me. So I tried my best to keep him occupied while I like quietly crumbled behind the scenes and totally went through every possible poison on the planet, like in an attempt to self-soothe and numb myself. Okay, I'm just being totally honest with you. I had no joy whatsoever, and I was 100% focused on surviving. There was no thriving happening. There was no joy happening. We were surviving. So putting him into this homeschool situation with a tutor that I brought in as much as I could handle to bring in was really and purely a survival mechanism. Okay, now what happened from there? Fast forward a little bit further. I got remarried, which was a whole new season of adjustment, transition, personal evolution, everything that comes along with that. And after we got married, we decided to travel the world. We were in international business, and I decided just to take my son with me and to homeschool him through the 1st grade while we traveled the world. So I did a combination of online programs and workbooks. And it's very interesting. I didn't put a lot of conscious thought into it at the time, but I noticed just kind of in passing, casually, that he was learning and growing just as much when we were doing the formal learning as when we were just having fun and not doing any learning at all. Okay. Now, 2nd grade and 3rd grade, we moved from New York to Australia. Remember, we were in international business, so I spent about 4 or 5 years just traveling. Okay, so 2nd and 3rd grade, we had moved to Australia, and he was in a traditional school in Australia. During that time, we took a 6-week trip around the globe, plus we took trips to Hawaii, Fiji, and Indonesia during that time. Now, sidebar, you have to be so aware of what you wish for, and you have to be so aware of your intentions, because those intentions that you put out into the universe, you bring them into you, y'all. Remember what I had said before I even had kids. I wanted my kids to be able to learn from the world. I didn't want it just to be theory from a textbook. And these things were unfolding without any conscious effort on my part. Okay, there's actually a proven statistic in science that you are 90% more likely to accomplish a goal simply by writing it down. It doesn't matter if you ever even look at that list again. Just by writing it down, you are 90% more likely to accomplish that goal than someone who merely thinks it as a passing thought. Okay, so here we were in Australia in a traditional school for 2 years. And during that time, we took trips around the world, traveling here and there. And what I noticed is that his awareness and perspective was so broadened compared to the other kids that were not taking these trips and taking these adventures. And his life happenings and his experiences were unbelievable. And interestingly enough, he was in a better mood. He was more joyful. He was more free and relaxed when we were just living than when I was trying to force the learning on these trips. Yet still, every time we would get back to Australia, I would go to take him back to his traditional school, and I would be over there doing the happy dance every time I dropped him back at school so that my life could begin again and things could go back to normal. Now, in the middle of all that, I will just tell you that we tried a half year of like an alternative style learning school, because I was thinking, well, maybe just the mainstream is the problem. And I thought I would try a different like alternative style of learning school, but actually it closed down due to lack of funding and support just as we were preparing to move back to the States. So fast forward again, now he's going into 4th grade. We've moved back to the USA and we did one final year of traditional school here in Arizona. And that is when we started to plan opening our own school. And we built our own school based on everything that I had seen and learned and experienced from, these 5 to 10 years prior of what I wanted, what I thought I wanted, what happened in reality, our schooling experiences. He was in school in Asia, he was in school in South Korea, in Australia, in the States. So we had seen and done a lot. And what I began to realize is that the education frustrations were a global frustration. It wasn't due to just one country or one state or one religion or one group of politics. It was a global frustration. So in 4th grade and 5th grade, he was, 4th grade, we finished up the traditional school. In 5th grade, we opened our own school. It was a tiny, tiny school in the first year. And we built it on 3 foundational pillars. So based on everything we had learned, our priorities and our foundational pillars were academics, so world-class academics. But for us, that was just the starting point. That wasn't the finish line, that was the starting line. So world-class academics, character development, and life skills. And I'll tell you a little bit more about those in a few minutes. But that was 5th grade. 6th grade is where he is now. And we were still doing our own school, which is a school for boys and girls, grades 1 through 8, until the coronavirus happened and the bottom fell out of everything. And no matter where you were, who you were, what you were doing, we all have been affected. Now, I should also note in passing that almost all of this whole journey that I just shared with you was while I was running a business from home. So some of you are entrepreneurs, some of you are mompreneurs, and now most of us, whether we like it or not, whether we had any desire to do it or not, are becoming homepreneurs, which means we are working from home in some form or capacity, whether or not we ever wanted to do it. Okay, so here's the question that I want you to ask yourself right now. Do you want to have a home full of joy? Do you want to have a family that's full of joy? Do you want to have a life that's full of joy? Are you willing to wage war on the mediocrity that is just totally raging all around you and threatening to overtake all of us? Because if so, that's what we're going to do right here, right now. So I want you to write in the comments if you're still with me and if you are ready and willing and really have a deep desire to build a life, a home, a family, an environment full of joy. Even through all this madness, I want you to put into the comments #JoyfulWarrior. Okay. Now, what I'm going to share with you is I'm going to share with you some of the lessons that I learned through this own process. I'm going to share with you just my observation and perspective, and then I'm going to give you some very practical tips that you can use starting tonight and starting tomorrow as you are learning to become the calm in the storm. Sound good? Okay. The first thing that I learned, and this is not... Okay, actually, let me rephrase that. It's not the first thing that I learned. It's the most important thing that I learned through this whole journey. And I never realized it while I was in the middle of it. I was only able to really see it, of course, in retrospect. Here it is. Inner work is the hardest work of all. It is so easy to look outward and to drown ourselves in the noise and the chaos and the madness and the stress and to play the blame game, or we're justifying, or we're just stewing in all of the drama, and we never get quiet and we never turn inward to go, okay, now what? What am I going to do about it now? There's an old saying that all champions know, which is that life is only 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond. So for sure, the inner work, getting quiet, going inside and digging deep to decide who I want to be, who I want to become. In the midst of all of this, that's one of the single most important questions that we can ask ourselves. And the thing that I learned too throughout this journey, I always needed the validation of other people. I needed the validation from the outside. I needed other people to tell me I was okay. I needed other people to think I was doing a good job, other people to praise me or respect me or support me, because my whole world was determined by what I thought other people thought about me. And I had to completely break that down and strip that down and rebuild my own self-worth and my own inner validation, one building block at a time. So one of the things that I can tell you, having gone through this whole process, as you're going through it right now, of figuring out who you want to be and what you want your family to represent and who you want to stand for in this season, don't compare yourself to other people. Don't compare yourself to other moms. Don't compare yourself to other parents. Don't compare your kids to other kids, not to the neighbor's kids, not to the kids on the WhatsApp chats, not to the kids with your friends on Facebook. Remember, whenever we compare ourselves to other people, we always end up comparing our weaknesses to their strengths, and it never measures up. Don't do it. Don't go there. It is so toxic. Give yourself permission to be you, to be unique. Give your kids permission to be unique. Give your family permission to have your own personal dynamic. You know, it's actually a law of nature that every person has their own unique smell. And that's very weird, but we do. Okay. Just like we have our own unique fingerprints, we have our own unique heartbeat, we have our own unique smell. We also have our own unique energy and our own unique personality. So why are we trying to make ourselves copycats of everybody else? So one of the things that we can do is we can learn from people all around us, but we don't want to be them. We don't need to try to copycat them and duplicate them. Just take the lessons that are helpful. You know, one of the things I learned a long time ago was only take advice from people that you would be willing to trade places with. Okay, so we can take advice from them. It doesn't mean that we have to become them. And we're certainly not out to compete with them. Okay. Now, at the same time that all of this stuff was happening, as I was going through all of these life transitions, and I was just like in a very organic way having to actually being forced to experiment with my son and his learning environments. And, you know, I can promise you that if I had ever found one really amazing solution, I would have stuck with it. But because I was never able to find a perfect solution for our family, that's why we kept looking and kept going to the next option and kept exploring the next available situation that may have been there. And while all this was happening, I was actually asked to teach a course once per week at a seminary, a local girls' school in Australia. It was a school of girls that had just graduated from high school, and I was asked to teach a class on life skills. So they knew that I was a personal and professional development coach to entrepreneurial women. So they asked me to come in and teach a life skills course. So I did that on a completely pro bono basis, just giving back to the community for 3 semesters. And what I learned during those 3 semesters, first of all, I absolutely fell in love with these girls. They were girls from all over the world. Some were, very few of them were actually from Australia. Some were from the United States, Canada. Some were from South Africa. Some were from Europe. Some were from Spain. They were literally all over the place. And they all landed in Australia for a year of after high school learning. And as beautiful and eager and excited as these girls were, and they had memorized a lot of data, they knew how to get very good test scores, but not only were they just completely naive, as most of us are, right, when we graduate from high school, but they had absolutely zero life skills. Okay, so we wanted to change the world, but we didn't know how to change, like check our banking account balance, or some of them didn't even have a banking account. You know, they wanted to go out and make a difference, but they couldn't make dinner, or they couldn't change a tire, they couldn't sew a button. And I remembered exactly what that felt like because I had been there as well. You know, actually, I remember when I was in middle school, I went to Clute Intermediate School in Clute, Texas, an hour south of Houston. And when I was in intermediate school, which was this name for junior high, it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And they taught a course over there called home ec, home economics. And I vividly remember thinking to myself, oh, that's so disgusting. Like, why would I ever take that class? Like, it was so beneath me because I was going to be something in the world. I was going to become, like established and sophisticated, and I was going to have people doing those things for me. And if I was going to go to college and get a job, why would I need to sew a button? Why would I need to like know how to iron? Why would I need to cook? I mean, I was just totally like insulted by the fact that they were even offering this course. And of course, it was mostly girls taking the class because the boys like laughed at it. So it was very, like gender strong. The girls took home ec and the boys took shop class or woodworking. And I was just like, so disgusted by the whole thing, in my wise old age of what would I have been at the time? Let's see, 11, 12, and 13. Okay, so I remember thinking there's no way I would ever need that stuff. Now, I had graduated from high school. I had gone into corporate America because as a kid, we never had a lot of money. We were considered like, I guess, middle class, maybe lower middle class. I'm not actually sure. I know that my parents both worked very, very hard for paychecks of the heart. My dad was a preacher. My mom was a teacher, and they made a lot of sacrifices so that we could just, make ends meet and have the things that my brother and I thought that we just had to have as kids. So I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I remember there was a lot of stress around money at my house when I was a kid. So I wanted to make money. Now, I had no idea how I was going to do it. I had never been around money. And I just knew that I wanted to create like this abundant, thriving life for myself. But what I learned very quickly was that this American dream, that you learn about, it was a big, fat scam. Okay, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you build your resume, you get a job, and you buckle in for basically 40 years of self-imposed prison. What on earth? My world was shattered. I was so just disgusted and shocked at the fact that when I was 22, 23, 24 years old, and I was looking around me and I was spending more, like I'm looking at my bosses and my mentors at the bank. I went into corporate banking and I was working for a global bank and I was working in marketing and strategic planning. And I remember looking around at me and thinking, okay, these are my bosses. This is my upper management. I'm spending more time with them than they're spending with their own families. And these are miserable people. So if this is supposed to be who I'm going to be, please God, when I'm, 20 years older, I was horrified. Okay, so what do you do when you're that age and you're, looking for the next step up? Well, I went to graduate school because I thought that's what everyone else does. When you don't know what to do, you go back to school. And both of my parents have double master's degrees and are highly educated people. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to get another degree. So I went to a very elite private school in Dallas. I started working on my MBA. All my friends at the same time were in law school or business school or medical school, some sort of upper league education. And as I started looking around me, especially in my MBA program, what I started noticing is that all of the women, like as we got into the second semester, third semester of graduate school, they all started dropping like flies and I couldn't figure it out. And it's because they started to realize that they could not build a family and a career at the same time. Like it was just such conflict, such inner turmoil and dissonance that all of these women were facing. So it was at that point that I decided to start my own business. And it was in that phase of my life, in that season, that I realized that I needed a whole set of skills that I never even knew existed. And I've got to be honest with you, that is when my first real learning began. And when I say learning, I'm talking about not like memorizing data for the test, not just learning to the test and memorizing and the all-nighters to try to pass the exam and cram it into my brain to forget about it the next day. I'm talking about real learning, where I internalized the information, where I wanted to know the information, where I was expected to use and apply and master the information to make me an upgraded human. Are you with me on this? Okay, now as I was going through this whole process, I want to tell you what I learned as I was looking back on that season as I was teaching these girls for 3 semesters about life skills. I was looking at my own kid who was in and out of like homeschool programs and traditional schools, and I was in the middle of like this inner educational tug of war that I never planned on. I never asked for it. I didn't want it. I didn't dream of being a teacher. I didn't dream of being a homeschooler. I certainly never thought I would open my own school. But just as life would happen, this is where I found myself. So I started doing some digging, and I started really digging deeper into the world's education system and the history of education and how we got here. And what I can tell you is this, okay? This is just a side point because it's very important that you understand this as you start to educate your own children, okay? The current educational system is over 200 years old. And it is a system that never actually worked to begin with. Now, without going into a lot of the history behind it, what I will tell you is that it was designed to do 2 things. Number 1, stamp out all individual will from the pupils. Literally, I am quoting from the founder of modern education. Modern being almost 300 years old, but it's the only industry on the planet that has not been forced to either innovate or die. We are still using the world's most archaic industrial system to educate our children. Do you understand that? Okay, so number 1, it was designed to stamp out the will of its pupils. And number 2, it was designed to create factory workers. Okay, that's why you go in and you sit in a row. You sit in a straight line. You only speak when spoken to. You're quiet, seen and not heard. The bell rings, you go take a break. The bell rings, you come back. The bell rings, you go to the bathroom. The bell rings, you switch classes. The bell rings, you go to lunch. We're learned to talk by a bell. Why? Why are we learned to think by a bell? It was to keep the children safe in the factories, because right about this time is when there was a major migration that was happening, going from rural America into urban America, where there was this mass movement into city life. So factories were opening, the parents were moving off of the farms into the factories, and they were bringing their kids to work with them in the factories, because of course this was before all the child safety laws were in place. So children were being overworked, but they were also being physically injured and killed because there were not safety rules in place inside the factories. So these systems were put into place into the world's classrooms to program children to follow the bell, to not think on their own, to sit where they're told, to go to the bathroom when they're told, to take a break when they're told, to eat lunch when they're told. They do everything by the bell, and they were graded A, B, C, D, E. These grades came from how meat was graded. Grade A, meat. Grade B, foods. This is how the grading system, everything was created to program and condition the children for how to survive in a factory. Are you hearing me on this? How was it when you went to school? How is it when our kids are in school? The exact same thing. Now, I got to tell you, let's fast forward 250 years. Today's careers, they don't care how much data you can memorize for the test. Okay, today's jobs, they need you to think outside the box. They want you to be creative. They want you to be innovative. They want you to be expressive. They want you to be a problem solver. In fact, the world's top companies today, last I checked, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, they don't even require a college degree anymore. Do you know what they want you to do? They bring you in, they ask you, they sit you for an interview, and they ask you to solve a problem. They ask you to innovate. They ask you to think outside the box. They ask you to sell yourself. Okay, so I want you right now to just take a deep breath and let's embrace this opportunity to rethink everything. Are you ready? Okay, here's what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to be aware, and I want to just share this with you, that I'm a big, big believer that everything happens for a reason. Do you agree? Everything happens for a reason. None of us knows exactly why it's happening, but we're all forced to deal with massive change right now. So I want to share with you some short-term tips on how to best handle the immediate situation, and then some longer-term tips on how to plan for what might lay ahead. Okay, so first thing I want you to know, please hear my heart on this, from my heart to you. Don't worry about your kids falling behind. Everybody around the globe is in the same boat right now. So the schools are going to start back where they left off, and they're going to review. Okay, I can tell you that I have been watching and learning and comparing and researching all the different schools out there, all the different, educational systems out there right now. And no one, there is no forced learning or forced curriculum being mandated by the government right now. They can't do that because there's no way for them to know which parents are home, which parents are not home, who can help homeschool, who can't, who has the resources for online learning, who doesn't. So there were a few schools that were very eager in the first few days and put out some online learning resources, and we're going to keep things, as consistent as possible. And even those schools have completely done an about face, and almost no one is forcing any sort of mandated learning right now. And there is nothing that is being expected from the government because everybody, y'all, literally everybody is in no man's land right now. Okay, this is new territory for everyone. So absolutely, when things go back to normal, like whatever that new normal is going to be, there's going to be review, and everybody's going to get caught up, and everybody's going to move forward. Okay, so please try your best. Just take a deep breath, relax, don't panic, and we are all doing our best. I can promise you that every school out there is doing their best right now. Every school right now is being forced to scramble to come up with plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. Nobody knows what is going on right now. Everyone is doing their best, so we all just have to be patient with each other and give each other a little bit of love and a little bit of grace while we're in this whole process, okay? Now, next thing I want you to do, I want you to think back to the major world happenings that took place when you were a kid. The major things that happened, let's say maybe you had some natural disasters in your community. I grew up on the Gulf Coast, so we had a lot of hurricanes when I was a kid. Or, I remember being a kid, I was actually homesick one day when the space shuttle exploded. Or maybe you remember where you were during 9/11. Whenever we have those major life happenings, we remember them. They become etched into our psyche, into our memories, into our belief systems. We remember where we were, what we were wearing, what we were doing, what we were eating, who was with us, what was happening in the world around us. This is one of those times. So your kids 100% will remember this season. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what do you want their memories to be? What do you want them to remember about this time? Do you want them to look back and remember that it was a time of fear and uncertainty and chaos and stress? Or do you want them to remember that it was a time of reconnecting and reevaluating priorities and reestablishing and strengthening family relationships? Okay, you and only you have the responsibility to decide and determine what this season of time is going to look like and what those memories are going to be for you and your family. Okay? Now, having said that, I also want you to remember that it is your job as the parent, especially as the mother. You control the energy in your house. Whether or not you realize it, whether or not you like it, whether it is purposeful and proactive, or whether it is reactionary and subconscious, you control the energy in your house. Now, the difference between the thermometer and a thermostat, right? A thermometer can take the temperature, but a thermostat affects the temperature. So your energy, your mood, your words, your presence, your body language How you go through your day, how you respond, how you communicate, you set the energy for your home more than anyone else. Okay, so I want you to become purposeful about what do you want that energy, what do you want those memories to be, how do you want your home and your environment to feel. Okay, I also want to give you permission to take the pressure off. Release the pressure. There's no point for these crazy high expectations. You do not need to be creating school at home right now. It is so unnecessary, and it is an almost impossible expectation for many, many families anyway. Okay, so this is your opportunity to make learning fun again. This is your opportunity to make your family unit fun again. You know, this is new territory for everyone. Whether or not you consider yourself to be an innovator, a risk taker, an adventure-minded person, we are all being forced to be pioneers at this point. Okay, so in that same vein, as you're thinking about the energy, as you're thinking about the memories, as you're thinking about that vibrational frequency that happens at your home, I want you to be aware that far more important than the academics or the subjects that our kids are learning is the emotions that they feel. So safety, security, stability, all of these things are so key right now. And it's important to understand that no one, your kids, your students, your pupils, your clients, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So right now, it's very important that we put the relationship before the academics. And we ask ourselves, okay, do my kids even like me? Do I like my kids? You know, this is a massive opportunity to either strengthen or reestablish a positive, healthy relationship. Okie doke? Now that we've got that groundwork in place, that foundation laid, I want to share with you some very practical tips. Okay, how many of you would like some practical tips? Yes? Tips that you can immediately implement and use starting tonight and tomorrow. Okay, that's what we're going to do right now. So, practical tip number 1. Okay, I'm actually going to share something with you. I'm going to give you a physical resource. It looks like this. This is called a weekly planning sheet. Okay, now I'm going to first teach you how to use this, and I'm going to invite you to create it yourself. And then I'm going to share it with you. Okay, so take a second and write down this URL. diggingdeepercoaching.com. That's where you're going to get this. diggingdeepercoaching.com. If you forget it, I'll go back and I'll write it into the live later. Okay, but you can put your name and your email address over there, and I will send you this whenever we're done with this Facebook Live. Okay, now what this is a template. Oh, and I'll just tell you that later this week, I am going to launch an official program for Homepreneurs, and I'll share more details about that with you as I get it finalized. But in the meantime, I am happy to share tons of free resources with you, everything I've got. Okay, so that's where you're going to get this, diggingdeepercoaching.com, and I'm going to email it to you along with a couple other things. Now, here's the thing. What this shows you right here, if you take a good look, let me see if I can see my screen and I can show this to you. Okay, if you see, there are squares over here. There is one box for every hour of the week, for every hour of the day. Okay, so this is a physical representation of your entire week. Okay, this is called a weekly planning sheet. There are 168 squares. on this page because there are 168 hours in the week. We've all got the same amount of time. Me, you, the president, Oprah, Beyonce, the dude on the street. We've all got the same amount of time. The question is what we do with that time. Okay, now here's what I'm going to recommend that you do. I am going to invite you to take 1 hour every Sunday night and create your schedule for the week. Now I'm going to show you mine. Let me pull my camera back up here so I can see you. Okay, this is my template. This is my generic weekly planning sheet. This is what I have as my template, my benchmark that I work to follow on any given week. Okay, now I'm saying that with a grain of salt. Now I'm going to put it a little bit closer, okay, just so you can see. You see it says sleep at a big chunk at the bottom, a big chunk at the top. You see I've got it color coded over here for different things for my own life, okay? Now, I'll explain all of that to you later. Don't worry. But I have a standard generic week for myself that I aim to follow. Now, why am I saying that it is a bit tongue-in-cheek? Because at the same time, I have never had, to this day in my life, and I have been a time management boss for 15 years, never once in my life, in these 15 years since I started tracking and planning my time, never, ever have I had 2 weeks look the same. Okay, I've never had 2 weeks back to back look exactly the same. Something always is happening, always. So this is my generic template, okay? But then every Sunday night, I take that hour and I customize my plan for the new week. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, the first time you're ever doing this, it's probably going to take you more than an hour, and that's okay. Okay, and it's going to be a work in progress, and you're going to change it and redo it and change it and redo it. And that's why I'm going to send it to you electronically so you can do it as many times as you want to. Okay, but what are you going to put in here? You're going to put the big things first. Okay, so if you've got standing appointments or things that are priorities for you, like your sleep, your exercise, your quiet time, your Bible study, your learning groups, your business meetings, whatever are your standing, like they're your anchors in your week. Okay, then you're going to put all the other stuff around that. And you're going to be able to customize it every week based on your appointments, things you have to do. You know, normally I would say errands you have to run. I'm not sure if that's going to be happening for the next couple of weeks or not. But how does this apply to you as a homepreneur with kids at home? Because what we have learned that works very well with kids at home is if you allow them to create their own version of their weekly schedule as well. Okay, now depending on their age, what I have learned is that if they are anywhere probably 3rd grade or older, they can at least help contribute to their weekly schedule depending on their age. So, you know, your junior high kids, they can probably do their own, and then you're just going to help them tweak it. Your high school kids, they can do their own, and they don't really need a lot of input from you. Your elementary school kids, you might help them and do it together and ask them questions so that they can feel like they're taking ownership. Remember, it is a very important law of human nature that people support what they help to create. Okay, so it will be a massive, massive victory in your life if you start the week with a plan. Now, please understand, no week ever finishes up the way you exactly had it planned to begin with. Life is a work in progress, and that's okay. But what I have learned time and time again is that we always end up massively ahead of the 8 ball if we start with the plan than if we don't start with the plan. And it's very, very common that you're going to have to tweak some things and move them around during the week just to make adjustments as you go because life happens. Okay, so that is one major tip. And when you can wake up the next day and go, oh, I know what I'm doing today. oh, you know what? I don't have time for that today, but maybe I can fit that on Thursday. And this is going to allow you to have certainty and to have a bit of a plan, as opposed to just waking up every day going, what do I do? I don't know. What am I supposed to do? And we don't know what's going on. Okay. So this allows you to get those mental, like, mind bombs out of your head and put them on paper. Remember, an overwhelmed mind does nothing. So when we can start to breathe some order into the chaos, you will find that it immobilizes you in massive ways. Now, don't you tell me next week, well, I tried this, Haya, and it didn't work for me. Guess what, y'all? It is a piece of paper. Okay, it is never going to work for you. You've got to work with it and use it and tweak it and practice it, just like when you're trying a new exercise plan, or you're learning a new language, or you're learning any new skill. Time management and proactive planning is a skill. It's not a gift. It's not a natural born talent. It's not something that you get, when God's passing out the personality traits. It is a skill, which means anyone can master it, anyone can teach it, anyone can learn it. Okie doke. Now, let's keep going. Okay. I invite you to use your phone. Most people have smartphones these days, and you can use the notes section of your phone, or you can make a running list, on a piece of paper on your desk, and keep a running list throughout the day of new ideas or topics that you could explore or focus on or dig into. There's a ton of stuff going around on social media these days. Great ideas are being shared. Great links are being shared. A lot of places that normally charge are offering things either at a discounted rate or for no charge, where you can do like virtual lessons, like Disney, NASA, a bunch of museums are offering, zoos are offering virtual tours, virtual classes, virtual lessons. So anytime you see a good idea, just keep a running list either on your phone or on a piece of paper, and then take an hour each evening to plan out the following day. Now you're saying to me, okay, but Haya, you just told me to plan the whole week at once. So why do I need to plan the day? Because when you're planning your week, you might have a chunk that says, kids learning, kids class, or whatever the case. When they're going to be learning, when you're going to be working, and it might just be a placeholder, but you don't know exactly what you're going to put into those blocks yet. And then every time you see a new idea of something that you would like for them to learn, or that would be helpful for them or would upgrade their skills in some way, then at night, you can customize their learning for the next day. Does that make sense? And while you're doing that, when you've got that 1 hour every night that you're planning out their next day, just make sure that give yourself a buffer. So every morning, now again, depending on how old your kids are, whether they're making their own breakfast, whether you're making your breakfast, give yourself a start time and give yourself a buffer where you get them organized and you get them going, and then you get yourself going. So for example, if you're going to get them started on their learning work, their school work, before you start your work for the day, then it's going to keep them occupied and busy. Now, if you watch the Facebook Live I did last week, and I can put a link to it if you haven't seen it yet, but I gave you a tip. I gave 5 tips for surviving the madness of homeschooling and of all this chaos of all the kids being at home. And one of the things that I said is that it is such a lifesaver and a game changer when you start organizing your schedule so that you can get up before your kids. So that quiet time when the house is dark and the house is quiet before the kids wake up, if you can arrange for that, it makes all the difference in the world. So I know for me, it's something that I planned with my son since he was a baby, that by the time he woke up, I already had 3 or 4 hours under my belt. I felt like I had a half day already clocked, that all of my priorities could have been adjusted and addressed and handled before life happened, when the kids wake up. And I still find that to be true, that whenever there's a time that I'm feeling like overwhelmed or lazy, or I was up later for whatever reason, and I didn't have that morning time before he was awake, forget it. My whole day is gone because he's like in my face needing time and attention and energy and focus. And I wasn't able to get myself that running head start that I need to be productive and to thrive during the day. So I can tell you, I've learned it, the good way, the bad way, the hard way, and the ugly way. That focused quiet time that you can give yourself before they are awake is such a gift. Okay, now, a couple other practical tips here before we wrap up. First of all, most people don't have only one kid at home. Most of you are juggling several kids. So this is something that I learned through our actual school that we have operated the last couple of years. And what I learned first with Yeshua, my son, when he was in Montessori school, is that multi-age learning is amazing. Don't feel like you have to have different classes for different ages. Okay, so one of the things that, you can learn the same subject and you can learn different degrees of that subject. And the older kids can teach the younger kids can learn from and model the older kids. So don't feel like you have to have different classes for different ages. The other thing is give yourself permission to improvise. Okay, so if you're learning from someone, like for example, if you're listening to this class right now, there may be some things that I'm saying that like, yes, I totally agree with that. And there may be things that you're like, oh, no, I just do not resonate with that at all. That's okay. So give yourself permission to take what works from everyone that you're learning from and leave the rest. Okay, another practical tool, make a list of what you want your kids to learn. Y'all, it is insane that the majority of stuff that our kids are learning right now in 2020 is the same stuff that we were learning 20 and 30 and 40 years ago. The world has totally changed, and yet they're still learning overwhelming majority of the same content. How can that be? Okay, so this is an amazing time for you to carve out what do you want your kids to learn. What skills, what life awareness, what life happenings, what do you want them to know about? What is important for you? And at the same time, look around you and look at what life skills would you like for them to learn? What domestic skills would you like for them to learn? In fact, as a part of my son's daily schedule, now that we're home also, again, we've got domestic skills as a 1 hour block of time on his daily schedule. It literally says domestic skills. So that means whatever I want him to do at the house or whatever I want him to learn, I put it into that category. Okay, now, if you would like for me to share with you some sample schedules and daily routines that I have had for my son over the years, morning routine, evening routine, learning schedule, I am more than happy to share those. And I will also add them to the email that I'm going to send out to everybody once we finish this Facebook Live. So again, go to diggingdeepercoaching.com, put your name and email over there, and I will send you this template, and I will also send you the sample schedules. Okay, let's keep going. Next practical tip, virtual playdates are awesome. Okay, so you can put your kids on FaceTime or whatever platform that you use, and you can give them a box of Legos and they can build with friends virtually via FaceTime. You can do the same thing with paper and crayons or Barbies, but they can it's like co-play. So they're playing next to each other. They can have imaginary conversations. It is unbelievable to watch their imaginations go to work as they're having these virtual play dates. And they have just as much fun as they have when they're with the person. They can have snack time that way. You can do so many things just via virtual play dates. Another great idea is online co-ops. So how can you do this? Well, maybe you've got a group of family members or a group of friends, and you can divide the subjects into groups, and you can have different parents handle different sections. So maybe you're going to handle math. I would never handle math. Maybe one parent is going to handle science, another parent's going to handle language arts, another parent's going to teach a new language. Maybe another parent is going to handle the life skills section. Okay, so you can divide it up, and that way the parent has to only be responsible for 1 hour, but the kid is engaged for several hours. So online co-op is a great short-term solution. Now, I want to also just say, take a breath, take a breather, and put yourself in your kid's shoes for a minute. Okay? put yourself in their shoes. How are they handling this situation? How does it feel to them? How are they tracking with this whole thing? Okay, so try as best as you can to be compassionate and empathetic to where they are holding, and try to be cool. Okay, try your best to say yes as much as possible. Try to be flexible. Think back to when you were a kid. How did your parents treat you? That's normally how we instinctively act with our own kids. So if our parents were limiting and controlling and they were only focused on obedience, how did we act? Okay, and that was a different generation. That was a different era. That is not the energy of the world today, I hate to tell you. So if you are building a relationship with your kids that is totally limiting and controlling and based on obedience, guess what's going to happen? Same thing that you did to your parents. They're going to rebel, they're going to become bitter, and they're just going to do it behind your back. So as best as you can, find a way to nurture your kids' natural interests and their passions, and find a way to say yes as often as you can. Now, different parents have different priorities and different life values, and you're going to put different boundaries in place around technology and screen time and all these kinds of things. And you totally get to customize this based on your values and your priorities. And right now, everybody's screen time is going to go up a lot simply by the nature of the beast, that we're going to have to do virtual learning more than we normally would have done in the past. So if that's the case for you, I just want to share with you two schools of thought. Number one, try your best to minimize their screen time within 2 hours before bedtime, and try to keep it completely off 30 minutes before bedtime. There's a lot of research that shows what's happening in the brain activity in those hours before bed, and it can make it very hard for them to sleep. And then there's also a lot of data that shows that kids under 2, they really don't need screen time at all. It can actually be very damaging for their brain development. So try to keep screen time under the age of 2 to a bare minimum, if at all possible. If it's just not possible, don't beat yourself up, okay? Happy mommy, happy family. If you're happy and you feel good and you're coping and you're thriving and the kids are safe and healthy, everything's good. Don't beat yourself up, and now is not the time to become a perfectionist, okay? Now, again, what are your kids' natural interests? What can you help them learn? What can you cultivate within them? And how can you build a curriculum? And I'm using that word very, very loosely. How can you build a curriculum around what they want to learn? Okay, that is going to help you so much, because people support what they help to create. And if they can feel like they are in the driver's seat of their own learning, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more interested. They're going to be more passionate. Okay, now 2 quick words to their whys, and this is 2 lessons that I learned myself the hard way. Okay, first of all, just prepare yourself. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you work to prepare, your kids are going to get bored. Okay, they're going to be bored at some point. So we automatically get triggered when they get bored or when they say they're bored, and we think back to all the things that our parents said to us when we told them that we were bored. Okay, don't go there. Just try to take a deep breath and not get so triggered when they tell us that they're bored. Okay, we need to let them learn to be bored. So don't be tempted to rescue them or entertain them. Help them, just allow them to work through that boredom, because boredom is the mother of creativity. And boredom and a lot of times a lack of a solution, that's the mother of invention. So let them work themselves through that. It's perfectly okay if you have some sort of like an optional activities list or a list of things they can work from, or that you can pull out and have in reserve if they say that they're bored, but don't be so quick to rescue them. I see a lot of parents that when they're going on a road trip or whatever, they automatically like feed their kids the DVD or the handhelds or the whatever, and their kids never once in their whole life have to learn how to look out the window, have to appreciate their scenery, have to listen to their own thoughts. We've got to allow our kids to learn that power of the imagination and to hear their inner voice and the power of creativity. Okay? Now, next thing, kind of on this same conversation, and we're wrapping up here, be aware that you may feel resentful toward your kids in this situation for no reason whatsoever. There may be no apparent reason whatsoever of why you feel resentful and why they are triggering you, just because they're in your space and they're annoying you, and why can't they think for themselves, and why can't they entertain themselves, and why do they need you, why do they need that connection, why do they need that engagement, is so normal right now. Everyone is like off their face. Okay, no one is normal. We're all having to navigate this path to a new normal. So allow yourself just to take some time to move a little bit slower and look and dig deep and see what's triggering that annoyance, and how can you work through that so that you're not taking it out on your kids. How can you give your kids your best and give them your best self, as opposed to them getting your leftovers and getting that automatic response of being annoyed and frustrated and low patience and low temper. Does that make sense? Okay, so couple questions to ask yourself on an ongoing basis. As you are designing your schedule, as you're designing their schedule, okay, here are a few last tips. What do you want your kids to take away from this season? What do you want them to walk away with? What do you want their memories to be during this time? What are your natural areas of interest? Okay, whatever you love learning, what you find interesting, your passions will also shine through. So you can engage them and get them excited about things that are interesting to you. Also, ask your kids, what do they want to learn? This is an amazing time, again, to either strengthen or reestablish your relationship with your kids, to get to know them. So ask them, what interests them? What do they find interesting? What would they like to learn? And how can you build a short-term casual curriculum around what they want to learn? And remember, it doesn't just have to be math, science, English, history. They're going to get that for the rest of their lives. Okay, so maybe you want to get creative and look at, maybe it's going to be some baking. Maybe it's going to be some woodwork. My son, we just took him to Home Depot. He got some birthday money from friends and family. So he's old enough now. My husband took him to Home Depot and he said he was like in heaven. Like he couldn't figure out what to do first and where to go first. So they're actually, I don't know if you hear the motor right now, but they're in the backyard right now as we speak, learning how to use his new woodworking tools and setting him up a little makeshift woodworking shed. So baking, woodworking, sewing, gardening, maybe it's spring, it's a beautiful time of year in most places of the world. So maybe you want to plant some flowers or some herbs and just take some time, and grounding is so healthy and therapeutic right now. Okay, so the bonding that can come out of these exercises together is unbelievable. Now, you may not be able to be all day long mother, and you may not want to be, but can you block out a couple hours here and there for that and let the kids know about it so they'll look forward to it? Okay, I heard an amazing example the other day. It's by this woman. She wrote a book called Radical Unschooling. And she gives us an example. She says, we tell our kids their whole life, they got to prepare for the future. And their whole time that they're under our roof, they're preparing for the future. And what about enjoying the now and embracing the now and maximizing the now? She said, it's almost like, if you take an adult, if you take us, and you force us into a classroom sitting at a desk for 6 to 8 hours a day for 20, 30 years and say, you're preparing for retirement. Okay? No, why would we do that? We've got to live in the now. We've got to embrace the now. So one really amazing way to pull all of this together, and that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to breathe. We're going to pull all of this together. And if you would like, I am more than happy. Also, I will include my practical tips. I will include them in the notes that I'm going to share with you after this Facebook Live, okay? So have a family meeting. Sit down with the family, pull all these ideas together, get their input, get their feedback, work on a draft, and then have a follow-up family meeting if you want to communicate the new plan. they will be so relieved. Even if it's on a subconscious subliminal level, they will feel so relieved to know that you have a plan, that you are in control. They need to feel your certainty. They are as stressed and overwhelmed and unsure right now as you are times 10. So you've got to be the calm in the storm for them, even if you just fake it till you make it in the beginning. And that will be such a source of reassurance for them. Okay? The last thing I want to share with you is this. Being overwhelmed is a choice. Okay? I want you to repeat after me. Being overwhelmed is a choice. Being overwhelmed is a choice. Now, it is a subconscious, automatic, reactionary choice for sure, but it is still a choice. So right now, I want you to put yourself back into the driver's seat of your own life, into the driver's seat of your family, and I want you to ask yourself, do I want to be overwhelmed or do I want to be empowered? It's a choice. You can choose to fill your home with joy or dread. It's totally up to you. And I know for me, I want my home to be filled with joy. I want my son to look back on the season and look back on his time under my roof with joy. And I want to totally go to war right now, waging war on the mediocrity that's happening in our life that's threatening to overtake us from every angle. But I want to be a joyful warrior. So I want you to put in the comments, if you're with me, if you want me to send you this information, everything that I've shared with you today, I'm happy to share it with you. In the comments right here, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it on the replay, type in #JoyfulWarrior and then go to diggingdeepercoaching.com. I will share all of this with you. Everything I shared with you today, I will put it into the notes and I'll share it with you in writing. And then last but not least, tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel, I'm going to do another Facebook Live on how to create a daily and weekly schedule where everyone thrives under the same roof. So I'm going to take this and break it down for you and help you figure out exactly how to put that schedule together so that everyone under your roof can thrive. See, today is a survival guide, right? And tomorrow we're going to upgrade ourselves from surviving to thriving. Sound good? All right. You are my joyful warrior friends. I love you so much. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been such a blessing to be here with you. Please feel free to like, comment, and share if this has been helpful for you in any way. I can't wait to see who are my joyful warrior friends. And I will, I'm going to leave it up for 24 hours. So for 24 hours, everybody who watches this, comments, and sends me puts your name into the diggingdeepercoaching.com, I will share all of these resources with you for 24 hours. Sound good? All right. Love you guys. Bye for now.